So number 10 for me is WrestleMania Night 2.
Oh my! Wow! What is going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watch Along Wrestling. Hopefully everyone is doing well and staying safe. It is so great to be back here with each and every one of you as we close out 2023. And I am honored and excited to have with me here today my main man Steve down in Orlando, Florida. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I am in the middle of our 2.5 week-ish winter break.
Wow, that's awesome.
I'm amazing.
Yeah, I am in the midst of my 12-week paternity leave. So I think that I'm like in the midst. I'm like at a cross between amazing and feeling weird because when you're off for that long, it's a little strange, but it's still good nonetheless.
Yeah, because we don't even get. I get like 8 weeks-ish over the summer even. So I can imagine an extra month. You're like, what am I doing with myself? Like.
Yeah, exactly. And no one else has off. So it's like, it's a little weird. But hanging out with the little man, it's been fun. And speaking of fun, 2023 coming to an end. When you reflect on the year that was in 2023, what are some of your thoughts about the year and some of what you're thinking about as the year as a whole?
It was really, I mean, this was my first full year getting back into everything,
Right.
and so, having now 12 months or, a little over 12 months, including before that and everything. But it was definitely, it reminded me why I enjoyed wrestling, when I was younger, and especially bringing my wife into it and everything and making it. It was also the first time that she had been to any wrestling show, period. And it was my first show in over 10 years. So this year, kind of looking back, a lot of highlights for me, a lot of highlights.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because I do think you started rewatching kind of in 2022, but you would watch some of the shows, not all of the shows.
Kind of over the summer, yeah, and especially when I first started again, it was more about like kind of going AEW first, and then WWE was the afterthought. And then throughout this year, it kind of actually flipped a little bit, where WWE was kind of monopolizing a lot of the time, and then AEW, it was if it happens, if I happen to have some spare time.
If you go back into the archives of Watch Along Wrestling, you can see a couple of different pieces Steve and I did, really kind of breaking down the MJF walkout and some of the previewing of the big shows that are going on for AEW at the time. But you think in 2023 that sort of shifted and WWE became more of the priority as opposed to AEW?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if it was even a conscious decision that was made. I think it was actually partially due to the fact that the TBS and the TNT apps don't necessarily work that great a lot of the time. And it was like it took a long time for certain shows to kind of like pop up on the app and that kind of thing. So I would just kind of forget about it. And, I would go, and a lot of times I do my my wrestling watching early in the morning when I'm getting ready for work. And
that's awesome.
And so if it wasn't on there, I wouldn't kind of go and seek it out or anything like that. So it kind of fell by the wayside for a little bit. I've been a little bit better now, but being on break and stuff helps me catch up always. But then, when school and work back, starts up again, then it's like, all right, well, I got to kind of choose. There's only so many hours in a day that I can sit and kind of go for watching wrestling.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's so much there, and I think for me that's sort of similar to what's happened with my. And I like all types of wrestling. I do think there's a difference. For me, I feel like there's two entirely different shows. If I'm sitting down to watch WWE than I am sitting down to watch AEW. I enjoy both products, though. I try to watch as much of it as I possibly can. But to your point, too, sometimes it moves so fast. If you've missed an episode of Raw, there's already another one ready to go. So it can be very tough, especially some of these things are on a little bit later. And with AEW, I do think it's the type of thing, you're going to have a great ring action every time you watch AEW. But I don't know that it always feels like if you've missed an episode, it's the end of the world from a storyline perspective.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. And I know that there's big things going on between like MJF, Adam Cole, and Samoa Joe, And I know like that's kind of like the end with the devil and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But also like those AEW storylines move so slowly that it just feels like, like it's going to be maybe another, who knows how long before the devil actually gets revealed.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I mean, AEW is having a pay-per-view at the Nassau Coliseum, just a hop, skip, and a jump away, my favorite venue in the world. And I am heavily considering going to the WWE house show the night after Christmas at Madison Square Garden over the AEW pay-per-view, which is just crazy to me. But I think it's a sign of, kind of where my interest lies right now in both pieces of the product. I'm sure the pay-per-view would be very good. I'd love to see Edge versus Christian. But, I think for me right now, WWE is just also just so loaded with tons of top talent. They've done such a good job in really establishing so many different names that we haven't really seen like this in a very long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that as we get into this recap here of the year of 2023, I think we'll see that it kind of ebbs and flows throughout the year. Before we get there, though, not only was this your first year back as a full-time fan, but you actually made your way to a WWE show over the summer, your first live event. I know you had came on initially to discuss that show and going to the show and how excited you were about it. But how was the show itself?
It was really good. It was great because it was kind of a kickoff to a nice vacation that we had. We went, we caught SmackDown, and then the next day we went on our cruise.
I remember that. That's cool. That was cool. Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. And it was a great experience. And again, like kind of it definitely brought me back really into it. And I will say it's like a little awkward when you can tell that there's a commercial break because everybody's just kind of standing around waiting to get back. And it's like, okay, like, on the one hand, being at live shows completely immersifies yourself into it, everything. Like, it, having that live experience is amazing. But then when it comes to a complete standstill, when you have to wait for the commercial break, it does kind of take you out of it.
Yeah.
For those, couple of minutes or whatever it is. When there's a match going on, it's great because like, you can just say, all right, it's just going on, right? But then when there's like, when they cut to a promo in the middle, or like when somebody's coming out and then the next person is coming out, and then that's when the commercial break happens, because that second person comes out and their music is playing forever and they're just kind of standing there.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just kind of picks it back up again. So,
absolutely, yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think for me, in thinking about that, I think I always like the idea of, like the guy will be sitting there and they're just standing in darkness, and then they come back from commercial break, and you can see how it's like that while you're doing things on. Like if you're watching at home, because they come back from commercial break, they're in the ring, their music's playing.
Yeah.
Whereas that's kind of the same deal there, if that makes sense. Like you're watching it and they're just hanging out in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really funny. I remember your show was actually the show where they did a situation where I believe they set up the rules for the tribal combat match between Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. That they completely forgot about at SummerSlam, and I'm sure we'll get to that. I know we'll get to that because I was at that show, and it was one of the most infuriating things. But that night, it felt like finally we're gonna get a Roman Reigns main event with no interference. So I'm sure being there live, it had to be pretty cool to see A, Roman Reigns, who's not on every show, and B, to see such a major storyline development there.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool. Whatchamacallit? I think also in looking back, you also got to see some cool dark matches as well. Got to see some stuff there. Were you surprised they did dark matches?
No, not really. I'm a little surprised that it was more at the end after the event than it was beforehand, because I mean, again, haven't been to a show in a long, long time, but to my knowledge, if they ever did a dark match, it was either one beforehand, or it was two, maybe like sometimes it would be like in between commercial breaks or something like that. But that was also the last time that I was at a wrestling event one, it was a pay-per-view, so there weren't any commercial breaks anyway. And even beforehand, any other shows that I had gone to, this was really before the age of commercial breaks mid-match, and anytime anything like that, where like 10 plus years ago, it was more of a natural commercial break, that it was in between matches or something like that, instead of in between a promo or in the middle of a match or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely, that had to be cool, though, especially you got to see some of the Raw stars too. So that was kind of cool that you got to experience some of that. Before we do get into our countdown, we're going to rank every single WWE pay-per-view from 2023 from, I guess, the worst to the best of the year, and compare our lists along the way, which we do not know. I wanted to take a minute and just mention a couple of the folks that, unfortunately, in the wrestling world, we've lost in 2023. Felt like any recap show, we should at least mention a few of these names here. And there's been some others, and if I do forget anybody, I apologize. But a couple of the ones that kind of jump out: Bushwhacker Butch passed away. Superstar Billy Graham passed away. Leaping Lanny Poffo passed away, the brother of the Macho Man Randy Savage. And then probably the three biggest names were Terry Funk, who passed away right around the same time as a couple of the others that I'm about to mention as well. And then obviously Jay Briscoe, who was the major proponent of Ring of Honor wrestling for many, many years. And then obviously Bray Wyatt, who had untimely passed away in August of 2023. Steve, any memories or any thoughts you have of any of those names?
Well, I would say not as much Jay Briscoe, although I'd heard of the Briscoes. I always, again, this is more of me not really knowing a lot of the extended like Ring of Honor and TNA and that kind of stuff. So when I first heard the Briscoes, I thought it was in some way, shape, or form they were related to Gerald Briscoe. I don't think that that's the case at all.
No.
Understanding.
But it is funny. I'm with you. I mean, I was heavily into Ring of Honor in like mid 2000s when the Briscoes were big, but even before that, I remember the Briscoes wrestling on some of those old independent shows we used to go to, those USA Pro Wrestling, ICW, those types of shows when they were kids, like 16, 18 years old, ticket sellers, just trying to kind of get their foot in the door. It was just obviously very heartbreaking because he was such a young guy,
and the fact that it was a tragic accident and not sometimes, unfortunately, when we hear of a wrestler passing away early, a lot of times it's some sort of drugs or alcohol or something that could have been avoidable, I guess. But for it to be just kind of a tragic accident, that's one of the more heartbreaking things of all. And also Bray Wyatt as well. The fact that it was an illness and that Terry Funk passing is obviously not obviously heartbreaking as well, but he lived a long, successful life and had a great career, and but especially for Jay and Bray to die so early and so young, heartbreaking.
Yeah, and a credit to both AEW and WWE for doing what they can to support the families. AEW has done this a couple of times now. When Luke Harper, Brody Lee passed away back in 2021. Now they're doing something similar with Jay and helping out the family. Mark is a major mainstay now on the AEW television. And as we're recording this just yesterday, WWE announced that Bray Wyatt, they've signed him to a Legends deal, and all of his proceeds from anything sold to his likeness will go directly to his family. So I think that's great. Yeah. Wanted to get that, wanted to at least pay a little bit of a tribute there. On this channel, I do have a Bray Wyatt tribute. Just this past week, I did upload my Extreme Rules 2022 vlog. A little late there on that one, but wanted to get it up. It was a fun vlog that my wife and I did. And so after that, I did do a little bit of a Bray Wyatt tribute in full. So if you wanted to check that out, check it out in the archives. And I'll put a link in the description for this particular piece because I do think that they were a major part here of 2023 at large. So, all right, well, let's get into it here. So let's talk about, I guess the thought, and I left this one up to Steve because I've been to a couple of different shows, and one of them is WrestleMania. So I had asked you, Steve, what your thought if we should count WrestleMania as one full show, or if we should count each night separately. And you had said we should do each night separately. What were your thoughts there?
Just that because they are separate. I mean, separate nights. So, and it was, to me, they're separate shows. There wasn't anything that was overlapping with the two of them. It just happens that they were the same weekend. So going into that, it kind of felt, okay, if I'm going to grade them both, number one, it definitely would have dragged the overall rating down, personally. But because I have such different opinions of night one and night two. Is another thing. So it was that.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd been to both shows, and neither one was at a discounted rate. I had to go to the show, I had to walk into the show, I had to pay $80+ of parking for each one of those shows. So I was like, these are two shows.
Yeah.
And I was for the first night, I sat way up in the boonies, and for the second night, I sat in the VIPs down below. And so totally different experiences. And because of that, I consider them two different shows. In looking at these shows, what did you grade the shows on in kind of looking at things?
So I kind of tried to grade it based on a couple of different things. Number one was obviously the matches themselves, and as far as overall match quality and kind of were there highs and lows? Was it kind of more generally overall solid? That's kind of where I was looking at, and how kind of to what extent if there were highs and lows, did the highs compensate for the lows? Because there's no show that's going to be absolutely perfect from start to finish. But something else that I graded it on, and I think one of the reasons why a couple of these are going to be a little maybe surprising is kind of the implications of everything moving forward. Was it more of a capstone to very important storylines? Was it going to be a continuation of other ones? What were the implications? What were the aftermath of this show moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think that's a great way to look at it. For me, I also, number one, of course, personal enjoyment, right? I think that's the number one way I had to grade these. I think it's also the way I always remember wrestling shows is what was I doing at the time while I was watching the show. Obviously, I went to WrestleMania both nights. I went to SummerSlam. So try not to be as completely biased to those particular shows as I would be to some of the other events. With that being said, though, I think for me also, even watching some of the shows at home, Survivor Series 2023 is probably one of the only shows that I watched live. You and I were back and forth, myself, my buddy, back and forth, a lot of my wrestling friends back and forth. And so that's obviously a lot more fun than when I'm watching the shows on a delay spread out over several days. I had a Royal Rumble party that, I think definitely amplified that show as well. And then from there, I just looked at some of the bigger moments, whether it be a big return, whether it be, something you can really sink your teeth into when looking at this show. And then, as you mentioned, obviously the match quality as well. I think, for me, I went back in preparation for this today and looked back at some of the matches. I told you before we started recording, I went back and watched the main event WrestleMania Night 1, the Usos versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Went back and watched AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins from the Night of Champions. Went back and watched the main event of Fastlane between Shinsuke Nakamura and Seth Rollins. So that kind of helped me as well I was kind of on the edge there, teetering between a few of them, and that certainly helped to kind of differentiate between the different events.
Okay. So are you ready to get into it?
I'm ready. Do you want to kick us off with what you ranked as your number 12 event?
Sure. So number 12. Looking at everything kind of, and again, I had to go back and look at a lot of it because I was like, okay, what were the big matches? What was the main event? What were the other good, solid matches? And this is one where I was like, Oh yeah, that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And number 12 for me is going to be Fastlane.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. What was it about Fastlane that that you didn't really love?
Well, so it was mostly everything that it was kind of like, when it's 12, there wasn't anything memorable to me. There wasn't anything that stuck out and jumped out that was like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was really good. And the main event being that last man standing match between Shinsuke and Seth. I remember the build up to it, right? The build up was pretty good,
Yeah.
but it just kind of felt like, it was that match itself. Maybe I would give maybe around a high C to a low B.
Yeah.
And when that's the best match on the card and everything else kind of brought it really down, you have to rank everything. So something's going to be last.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that it was horrible. It was just not particularly memorable. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you on that one for sure. That one, I'll get it. It's not my number 12. But I can certainly understand the perspective. There's only 5 matches on the show too. It's a weird kind of show. It's no Roman Reigns. No, a lot of people aren't on this one. But yeah, no, I definitely hear that. For me, number 12 was actually one of the more recent WWE offerings, the Crown Jewel 2023.
Okay.
For me, I think it's similar almost in a way to, so if at Fastlane, Shinsuke, cosplaying as Kane wins the WWE Championship, and if it ends at the moment where he is standing on the ladder after he just misted Seth Rollins with all this red face paint, Rollins falls to the table and he wins the title, there's this moment of like, oh my God, we have this badass heel now, and they pulled the trigger on him. This is great. And I think you're going to put that as like a theme for me with the Seth Rollins matches throughout all of them. But with that being said, that didn't happen. And here, it's like I felt like they were on their way, and they still are, but not as strongly, with my main man, as I'm wearing his shirt here today, LA Knight. And you kind of, it built to this moment where he'd be in the match there, Crown Jewel against Roman Reigns to get the title. I really feel like they should have chose a different event for it. I think you could have built him up a little longer. They went way too quick with LA Knight in the title match. And I think like you put him on the Rumble. If you did the Rumble, Roman Reigns versus LA Knight, you built him up for the whole year. I think that really would have done a great, that would have been a really exciting piece to the Rumble. Instead of the trigger on it here, and then they obviously don't give him the win. I think my wife subbed it up perfect. I said, damn, I got spoiled on this match when on Twitter, and she said, oh, what happened? I said, Roman won by, interference. And she said, I spoiled that for you last week. So I mean, where it's like, how many times are we going to have these Roman Reigns interference finishes? And I don't know. The whole show it wasn't anything that really jumped out at me. Hated the John Cena Solo Sikoa finish of Solo just destroying John. Thought John did a really good job building that up into this point of like, he's back, and maybe, maybe he's going to have this emphatic win to potentially come back at Mania, and instead he just gets destroyed. So I just said Crown Jewels just did what was not solid action on the show, but didn't really sit with me too well.
It kind of more felt almost like it was John's just here because there's the writer's strike going on in Hollywood, and that he can't do anything. And so then, but the way they made it sound is that, John Cena's back. Like, he's going to be here for a little bit longer than just a couple of months.
Yeah.
And for that to happen. Yeah. So I will say that Crown Jewel is next for me at number 11. Yeah.
I figured it bad.
Yeah. And for no other reason, thinking about it, it was kind of a back and forth. If for no other reason than the fact that Logan Paul won the U.S. The U.S. Championship. That by itself, if some of these other things hadn't happened, then this definitely would have been dead last. just because of that. But I did like, even though you did kind of have that feeling of, we know what's going to happen with this Roman Reigns LA Knight match. Like, there's always that maybe they're crazy enough to do it. Maybe they're actually going to take the chance. Maybe if LA Knight is the one that that kicks out Roman Reigns, that would instantly propel him even further into the stratosphere than he already was. Like,
Right.
he is the new Rock if you do that. Like, the second you do that, he's golden, he's platinum, like he's diamond, like everything. But you know at this point you know that Roman isn't going to lose any other time other than it's going to be WrestleMania, and it's going to almost have to be WrestleMania night 2. Like, it's going to be that, and that's going to be it. You know, he's not going to lose to LA Knight on a random pay-per-view, even if it is in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think it's a great point. I think it was tough in a way, because now I think he's still very popular. He gets the biggest pop when he comes out. His merch is doing very well, but I am interested to see how far they go with him. For me, I think a great spot for him is against Logan Paul at WrestleMania for the U.S. title. I think that'd be great.
I think that would be yeah. And you know that even if they're still kind of, you know, you always hear the rumblings of, are they, you know, they're not sure about LA Knight, you know, they're not convinced 100% or whatever. Anybody going up against Logan Paul is going to have instant pop. Like, you know, it's, so if you're kind of unsure about him, put him up against Logan Paul. He's athletic enough where he can hang with Logan Paul as far as, like, you know, that kind of thing. And realistically, yeah, getting the U.S. Championship as his first title is not a bad thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we'll see. For me, number 11, I went with, and this is tough because I do think this particular pay-per-view had 2 of the top 20 matches probably in 2023. But I went with WWE Payback. Probably the best women's match of the year on this show, the cage match between Trish Stratus and Becky Lynch. Also loved the Judgment Day against Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, the street fight there. That was a lot of fun. Thought Pittsburgh was on fire for this show. They ended up doing a deal. And for me personally, I love this show because I was in Aruba on my baby moon, and my wife had to do some schoolwork. And so I was sitting around. I looked at the time. I was like, wow, this show's going to start. Couldn't get Peacock in Aruba, so I actually went and got the WWE Network, which obviously is not available here in the States. Watched the show live in real time, but watched it through the WWE Network app, and then got to experience some of the really cool pieces of the WWE Network kind of in their archive. So a lot of fun for me watching this show. I just honestly, when I looked at some of the other, you know, different implications, I think the main event on this show is the first of the 2 Rollins Shinsuke matches. I think it's probably the weaker of the 2 Rollins Shinsuke matches. And so that's what had me ranked this year at number 11. But I don't think by any means this is a bad show. And honestly, I like John as the host, but I do think John did approach this as too much of the silly John Cena that I just don't love about his character.
Yeah.
It's almost the point of being corny, you know, like, hey, look,
I mean, you know, preaching to the choir here.
Like, it's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah, no, preaching to the choir here about John Cena being corny.
I think I even texted you like, hey, is it me? Or is John Cena pretty damn corny? And you were like, oh, no, it's not you. He is a corny son of a gun. And it is. It's like sometimes he was the host here. I remember in the back he had the tie on with the John Cena gear. It's just completely silly. So, yeah, so number 11, Payback, but not a bad show at all. This is a good show, I thought.
So, number 10 for me is WrestleMania Night 2.
Oh, wow. I was not expecting that one. That one you got me. Though I bet there's a lot of people watching who might agree with you quite well there.
And again, you know, so a lot of this kind of, you know, if we're kind of not splitting hairs necessarily, but I'm nitpicking here, and I'm going, okay, you know, like, was there a single moment that is kind of dragged everything down or built everything up, or, you know, that kind of thing? And then if not, then, you know, kind of going from there. And Cody losing night 2, it seems like that has been a weak spot overall for that's kind of been the entire year, because it was touted, you know, he comes back, he wins the Royal Rumble, and then I guess I don't know if they thought that it was going to be too predictable for him to win at WrestleMania also, for him to come back after his injury, after having this entire thing built up, and just for him to lose that match. Looking at what has happened afterwards with everything. So, because here's the thing, everything with the bloodline could have still happened the way it happened. And Roman not having the championship doesn't change any of that.
You're right.
If anything, it would have made the storyline more compelling, because now he's on this kind of like vindictive rampage or something. But again, that would have required him to be a little bit more present this year. And
right.
That wasn't going to happen anyway. So, who's to say that? But I also think that Cody this year after WrestleMania, he had the kind of on a couple of recurring things with Brock, where and again, we haven't seen Brock since either. But I just feel like they've done nothing with Cody, where he could have been something special on SmackDown every night, or whatever it was going to wind up being. And when you make an entire extra second belt and put it on Seth, because that Roman isn't going to be there all the time, and you need some big championship belt to be on pay-per-views,
right?
Yeah. So it was so frustrating in looking at it, and just everything that's come out of it. Maybe this is just me being vindictive and being frustrated with the fact that it feels like that shouldn't have happened that way. But there's also I'm not a particularly big Bianca fan.
Yeah.
And so, when that's the big main event, I'm kind of indifferent towards it, Well,
and I will say, you had the triple threat.
The triple threat was good. The triple threat was the highlight, and that's probably what saves it from being any lower.
Yeah, you had that, and then you had the main event. And for me, very different. I was at the show.
Yeah.
Show going with my 3-year-old daughter. So seeing her take all that in, seeing Bianca live, her favorite wrestler, seeing Cody live, her favorite wrestler, doing that whole deal, and really taking in the whole weekend of building to this first time ever match, the face of AEW against the face of WWE. That's why it's significantly higher on my list. If I watch this show at home, you and me on the couch watching the show, I probably feel very much similar to you, because other than the triple threat, and to a certain extent the main event production was obviously great, I think the Hell in a Cell is pretty disappointing, honestly, against Balor and Edge, despite it was just not. And Edge won every single time. He beat the Judgment Day like a drum. He beat them every time out. You also had Omos against Brock Lesnar. Shane McMahon injuring his quad. The 4-way women's match with Ronda and Shayna. I agree that it's a relatively weak card. It's going to be significantly higher on my list, but there really wasn't all that much to sink your teeth into if you weren't really there to experience that.
There was nothing there that wowed me. Even when I was looking at the card from getting ready for it, it was kind of oh, okay, Edge versus Finn, Hell in a Cell, that's going to be cool, right? And even that was it ended and it was kind of all right,
Yeah, they even had to stop it, I think, because someone was bleeding to fix the blood, which is really in the Hell in a Cell. Mick Foley's falling off the top of the Hell in a Cell. Himself 6 times. I get it's a different year, different time period, but we're stopping things to make sure people are okay. It's too much.
Right. And I mean, that's a whole different tangent of if it, again, the pay-per-view used to be, there used to be a reason why you had to pay extra for it. It was uncensored. It was, live. It was anything could happen. Thinking about the kinds of big moments that happened on pay-per-views with the cat flashing crowd and all that stuff that would never happen in a million years nowadays. Not that that's a bad thing, but it takes out that anything can happen. It's live. It's edgy kind of situation. I know WWE isn't the same anymore, but to stop it for blood, wow, that was kind of But so
I get criticism of it. Didn't expect it to be number 10, but I get the criticism of it. For me, number 10 is going to be a show you've already mentioned, Fastlane.
Okay.
Had had this one a little higher. And then I went back and rewatched the Rollins and AJ match. So that was really good. So I moved that up ahead of this to not to be giving spoilers away. But for me, the reason why this match, this show, I actually like the show a lot. I watched a good portion of this one back. I feel like right now the slogan of WWE can be anything could happen in the WWE except for title changes because they happen so few and far between. You have Rome with the endless title reign. You have Gunther with the endless title reign. You have Rhea Ripley's coming up on a year. Seth Rollins is coming up on a year. You have so many title reigns that go on for so long that when that happens, I feel like they don't mean as much as Roman's reign. So for me, birthday weekend, sitting down to watch Fastlane. And I remember I was kind of like, boy, there's 5 matches here. None of them are really popping off as being super exciting matches. But then Jey Uso and Cody won the titles, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from? So I was so surprised to see them win the tag titles. I was impressed that, kind of that repackaging of Jey as the main event, Jey Uso with the and it's just me, Uso, day one-ish, and the whole crowd is doing it with him. And I was like, I thought, because I went to SummerSlam, at the end of that, I was like, he's done. He'll never be in a main event again. He'll be, mid-card Jey Uso from now on, because it just didn't work for me at all. And instead, I mean, he's been a real bright spot. And then the two of them going out and getting tanked and then doing the post-game Fastlane after where they're both yeeting. And Cody is very, very much like just letting his hair down. It was that was fun. You had the 6-man with the LWO against Bobby Lashley and the Profits. And Carlito returned and joined the team. You had John Cena's probably, without question, in my opinion, his best usage since his return, where he's in there with LA Knight in a tag match against the Bloodline, and it was all about LA Knight over. And it was a solid match from John, too, who's had 2 pretty clunkery matches other than those 2. So, again, the aforementioned match with Solo and then the awful match with Theory at Mania. So, for me, I liked that. And I liked the main event. I, of course, even watching it back today, I was like, man, I really wish that Shinsuke would have won this match. We could have had they should have just pulled the trigger on him. But I like Seth, and I think his matches are good, but I want him to lose the title every time out. I don't know what it is. So I thought this was a solid show. The one that, you miss lacking in star power for sure.
Yeah. I was kind of, I kind of was going back and forth on this next one, but this might be one of those, like, the situation around it was probably maybe like kind of, I don't know, tainted or whatever. And maybe I need to go back and watch this, but I found Backlash to not be particularly exciting.
Now, here's the thing. Hear your thoughts on that one. I will say, if you're not a Bad Bunny fan, I get it.
Yeah. So I will say that the best thing about this show was the crowd.
Yeah.
Because they were 100% into it, and it was great. And it there was a lot of it. But again, looking back and looking at what the highlights were, the highlights don't really do anything for me. Cody versus Brock does absolutely nothing for me.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest Matt Riddle fan, so the Bloodline, KO and Sammy, that's one thing, but you throw Matt Riddle in there, and again, he's one of those wrestlers that always kind of drags things down, personally. Like,
and Roman's not in that match, right?
No.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So that's
not there.
Usos.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right. Right after Mania, yeah, it makes sense. Usos were still a thing.
Yeah, the street fight was great, and that was probably for me the highlight of the match of the night was the street fight.
Yeah.
But then everything else, like, meh.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's funny because I had mentioned something on Twitter the other day too, where I had said about, Bad Bunny had this incredible moment, and someone got back to me and said, I don't know who he is. And maybe that makes me I don't listen to mainstream music. I don't listen to, I don't really know him. So for me, I was just like, why is he taking up so much time on the show? And And I get that perspective. Obviously, I do know him. My wife's a huge fan. My wife's obsessed with him. My daughter loves him. And so for me, it was a great moment. And that much
Okay,
longer.
well, and it's here's the thing. Like, he is one of the top artists in today right now.
Mhm.
Like, and again, like, just because, it would be like similar to 20 years ago going, oh, well, I don't know who the Backstreet Boys are.
Right.
Like, he is a superstar. He, like, for anybody under the age of 30, you probably know who he is, and he's a megastar. And, wrestling fans not knowing who he is because we all still listen to Saliva and, WWF The Music Volume 4, that's different. And also the fact that it was in Puerto Rico, like,
Yeah. No, I definitely felt a little differently about that show. It'll be a little further on my list, but a little further down on my list. But as I get to kind of my top 10 here, number 9 on my list is going to be the Night of Champions over in Saudi Arabia. Really, again, nothing particularly wrong as I pull up my notes here about this show. Nothing really wrong here about this show. The triple main event, I love the build for that. I thought it was really well done. I thought Seth Rollins and AJ Styles, great match to start things off. There just wasn't really, I think the biggest thing to come out of this for me was that Asuka won the title. And for me, I was thinking, if you're going to have Asuka win the title, just do it at WrestleMania. Why hold off for 2 months? You could have had a big moment there where she, really ascended to that next level by getting the win over Bianca. You also had Brock and Cody, the next step in their feud, unnecessary. I just didn't love the feud. I liked their match at SummerSlam, but the 2 matches prior didn't do anything for me. And then, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn finally getting the big win over Roman and Solo. Roman losing the match, but not taking the pin. A really good match there for the tag titles, especially I thought Roman was going to win that one. For me, I was at a family reunion in North Carolina, and they had my wife's family reunion, and they had a movie theater, and a lot of the kids were going down there watching movies. We were all kind of enjoying that piece of the Airbnb, and I looked and I saw they had all of the streaming services connected to this movie theater. It was no live TV, but you had all the streaming services. So I was like, wait a minute, if Peacock is there, does that mean I can stream this show middle of the Saturday? And I did. And so I sat down there watching in the home theater this show. And so I think that probably, I definitely think fondly of that experience. But for me, I just think it was kind of just a their show. And that's why it falls at number 9 for me.
And, I definitely, I think that those points are kind of valid. I ranked it a little bit higher just because we're kind of getting into the things that I actively hated about shows. And now we're kind of more leaning towards it wasn't bad, but it wasn't necessarily anything special.
Right.
But so we're kind of wavering a little bit back and forth. And I feel like this is also probably one that you probably have ranked higher, again, because you attended. And I'm going to put SummerSlam down here as well.
This is your number 8, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. What was it about SummerSlam that you had it ranked at number 8?
Again, Cody and Brock was better than some of the other ones, but this was more of a, again, not that there's anything that I actually disliked about it. I thought that, again, Jimmy betraying Jay at the end, that part of this story kind of hasn't made sense a little bit. Because Jimmy was originally the one, wasn't he? This storyline has been going on for so long. I don't even know. But I thought that at first Jimmy was the one that was kind of hesitant about following with Roman still.
Correct. It was the whole thing leading into Money in the Bank. It was,
you're
out of the bloodline, and if you're out, then I'm out too. And then that's when they had the big blow up. And it was Jimmy who did it first.
And so then for him to
Roman at Night of Champions.
Yeah. So
that's a big piece. Is actually that Usos turning on Roman and Solo. So I should have probably. That's a good part. But yeah, no. But I hear you on this piece for sure.
I mean, other than that, like I'm not a huge fan of like the kind of gimmick sponsorship kind of things either. So even though LA Knight won the Slim Jim Battle Royal, the fact that there was a Slim Jim Battle Royal to begin with, like,
I'm obsessed with those, and I'm bummed that I didn't get a chance to do a Slim Jim taste test because I've never had a Slim Jim, and I would have loved to do it. I was trying to get the guys to do a Slim Jim taste test, and we just ran out of time for the channel. But I do love those, even though I realize how ungodly, ridiculously corny they are to have, like, you know, Rey Mysterio going into a blood battle with Dominic while Cinnamon Toast Crunch is banging around, hands like this, outside the ring. It's ridiculous.
Or, you know, I mean, rest in peace, the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match. Like, I did like the fact that there was the Ronda Shayna MMA style match.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
That, you know, so again, like, especially down here, like, nothing that actively stuck out to me as bad.
Yeah.
But just a lot of kind of, all right. Oh, and EO cashing in Money in the Bank.
Yeah, that was very cool. And I will say this, you know, again, I attended SummerSlam, had a great trip there in the archives here just this week. I also did a recap of my entire SummerSlam trip. I put up a whole vlog about it earlier this year. You can go and check out those archives. I had a lot of fun. I think, you know, just being with Alex and Nick and Randy, we had so much fun during that weekend. And, you know, just being in that house together, streaming nonstop SummerSlams on Peacock all weekend long. It was such a great wrestling trip. So much fun going to Cleveland. So great being in Detroit and getting to go to Ford Field, something I've wanted to do since WrestleMania 20. Yeah. If not, this show would have been number 12 on my list, but it is number 8 right there with you. So it is not higher on my list because I was there. It is because I was there, and it's higher here at number 8. There are a couple things I loved about this show. Love's a stretch. There's a couple things I liked about it. I liked, as you mentioned, EO cashing in. Awesome. Didn't expect that at all. Bianca won the title. I was like, all right, great. You know, I know Dakota will be happy, but I was like, we're going back there? Like, we just had her lose that reign. I don't know that we need another Bianca Belair reign. So EO came out, cashed in, felt like a huge moment. I liked Brock and Cody a lot more than I'd liked their first 2 matches. The top 5 match of the year for me is probably Seth Rollins and Finn Balor. And this show probably is a top 5 show of the year for me if Balor wins. And that match, I will tell you, I was so invested in. I mean, living and dying with every pinfall, really wanting Finn Balor to get the win. And when he didn't, man, it was like crushed. I mean, I was like, why did we do this twice then? Why did we have Finn Balor lose twice? I thought for sure he was going to win, and you'd have all of Judgment Day holding up all the gold. And that would have just made this show so much better for me. Instead, he loses, which kind of brought the show down. And then Jay and Roman, I just I don't understand why they did the whole deal where they said no interference, and then they just went back on it, and they didn't even tell us that they just forgot the rule. They were like, hopefully no one was paying attention to SmackDown. Made no sense. That was stupid. It made no and so instead you get the same Roman Reigns type main event that you get every time out, and then Jimmy comes in. He interferes, turns on Jay, makes absolutely no sense. Never, as you said, it's never really been explained. You know, I'd say the only thing for me was being in the crowd and noticing the start of, you know, the Jey Uso, just me, Uso, everyone doing the hand. I thought was really cool. And as you mentioned, LA Knight white hot at this time, so him getting the big win in the Slim Jim, you know, meat stick battle royale was a cool moment, but it was a cool moment of like, why is this on the show type of thing. And I love battle royale. I still don't know why I was on the show. So yeah, but that for me, that's where I was at in that perspective.
So this next one,
number 7.
Number 7. Again, this is going to the what did it mean moving forward kind of thing, and there are some important moments here, very important moments but there was one maybe two single important moments that overall kind of didn't do anything else. And I'm going to put the Royal Rumble as number 7.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. Obviously, Sammy, with this kind of like cementing hit, with him turning on Roman, cementing his exit from the bloodline, probably one of the single most important moments of the year, and it happened in January. The second thing should have been Cody winning the Rumble, but I'm very salty about that. Rhea winning the Royal Rumble was amazing, and obviously going on to winning the title and everything like that, amazing, phenomenal. You would have had. I just now remembered that Bianca versus Alexa Bliss was even a thing, considering Alexa's been out for so long.
Right.
And the aforementioned Bray Wyatt LA Knight match, which again, at the time, it was the LA Knight is the sacrificial lamb here for Bray Wyatt's return, and it's going to be this phenomenal thing. Of course, things didn't turn out the way that we all hoped that it was going to, but also like the LA Knight randomly becoming a superstar is something that nobody could have predicted. But at the time, like, again, like, there's nothing here so that moment, like those two moments alone, again, are why it's not any lower down on here.
Yeah. I think that makes a certain amount of sense. And so when you were saying Cody winning, you weren't happy about that. Who were you hoping was going to win?
Well, so I think it's more about Cody winning isn't the problem. The fact that Cody won the Royal Rumble and then goes on to lose at WrestleMania.
Okay.
It is what like it was. It's his comeback. It's a great moment and everything like that. But it's a little bit soured by the fact that WrestleMania happened the way it did. Had that not turned out the way it did, Cody winning the Rumble would have meant more.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree 100%. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I also think that they didn't need to announce he was. I get that, like, yeah, it was a surprise. Yeah, I think you could have made it a surprise too. I think that would have helped.
You could have. Yeah, you could have made it a surprise.
Yeah. You didn't mention though, we did get the big Hardy concert right before the main event for about 20 minutes after a 4.5-hour show. So we didn't get into that detail as well.
I completely forgot about it, and now I want to change it back down to number 12.
Yeah. It's brutal. I was like, oh, thank God they forgot the Hardy concert. And then it's like, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome. I was like, you're kidding me. It's a little lower on my list, but it's coming up soon. And I'll explain why. For me, number 7, I know this is going to be one that might be a little controversial, and it really doesn't have anything to do with any reason other than, honestly, just I feel so strongly about the 6 shows that are ahead of it. Number 7 for me is Elimination Chamber. I know people love this show, and I think, honestly, I get it. I was at the Raw a week or two before this in Brooklyn. Sami Zayn was as hot as a star as they could have possibly had after the Royal Rumble. That period of time where he was going in there. The weekend was amazing from a perspective of, like, I remember watching SmackDown and feeling like, oh, my God, I'm ready to run through a wall here, pull the trigger, give Sami the belt. I don't care if you take it off him the next week. Like, give him this moment. And he felt like such a massive star, and they didn't give him the moment. So I feel like if they had given it, I think that this could be a top 3 show of the year because they didn't give him the moment, even though it's still a very good show. I mean, there's nothing bad on this show. I think both Elimination Chamber matches are very well done. Bad winners. I didn't think, like, Asuka winning was an obvious winner. Austin Theory, at this point, I was so over him. I was like, I could go with anyone else over Austin Theory, especially because I knew that I thought John Cena was going to get the U.S. title match. And so I thought the bigger match was John Cena and Logan Paul. And I just didn't see anything in heel Austin Theory at all. So him getting that win, bad winners all around on this show. And I think that's what kind of downgrades it, even though a white hot crowd, unbelievable atmosphere, and a really strong main event, despite, again, it not working out for Sami Zayn.
So I will say that actually I can talk about this now because this is actually where I put Elimination Chamber kind of slightly one higher above it.
Yeah.
And I had very similar sentiments where it's tough because now all of this, again, like you said, we know Roman's not gonna lose on, as much as Elimination Chamber is a big important match and it's a big important PLE. It's not WrestleMania, but the thing is that it was one of those things where you say, okay, whoever is going to beat Roman, it has to be a significant person. Like there has to be a build up to it. And there is no bigger build up that was happening than Sami Zayn fighting Roman Reigns. Like this is a storyline that is over a year in the making. And this could have been the culmination, like you said. It could have been a phenomenal thing, and they could have torn the house down. And if Sammy wins, but he doesn't. But it's kind of one of those like, this was a pray for the best, but was it prepare for the worst but hope for the best?
Right, yeah.
Kind of thing where it's like, okay, like yeah. They could again. The Mad Men could do it. They could pull out a surprise and actually make Roman drop the belt to Sammy. But are they going to? Smart money said no, and that kind of prevailed. But like you said, the expectation of for me, there was less expectation of Sammy winning than there was Cody winning, and that's why I put Night 2 further down the list, because it subverted expectations in a very negative way, where this would have subverted expectations in a very positive way. And yeah, knowing that it happened the way it did, to me, it doesn't necessarily tarnish anything. And the other matches were pretty solid. I'm actually, for who he is and for what he is, I'm actually kind of an Austin Theory fan.
Okay.
Because he is one of those, like, you love to hate him heels, and that's what makes him a good heel. Like, he has everything. He can talk, he can wrestle, and he can make you hate him. Like, that's all you need to be a good heel. Granted, that's also why I hate Logan Paul with a burning passion, but he's also a miserable human being outside. I don't know Austin Theory's personal life and how, if he's a miserable human being outside also. But I know him as a WWE superstar, and he has that kind of like a natural heel sort of quality, but he can back it up with everything. Other wrestlers, maybe Dominic Mysterio, for example, they have that natural heat just because nobody likes you, like, and that makes you a natural heel. But Austin Theory, like, he can, like, I don't necessarily see him turning face anytime soon, which I think would be amazing. But I watch him wrestle, and he's always entertaining to me.
Well, he's good in the ring, and one thing about him also is he grew up a fan. So like if you watch, there's like a couple different pieces with him involved, and you could tell he really does like the business. And one thing I liked about him is when I went to an indie show with Austin Theory, he was the champion of the promotion, and every single person on the show was doing a pre-show meet and greet, post-show meet and greet, and they were setting up tables during intermission like most folks do. Austin Theory came in the beginning, walked into the back, had his match, and left, and did not do any sort of the meet and greets like that. And I thought, damn, that guy's a star. Like, in a way, it worked. Like, made sense to not sit there and canoodle with the fans and do all that.
Yeah.
Thing. I kind of really did like that. So I don't think Austin Theory's bad. I just think some of his booking's been bad. Like, his cash-in of the U.S. title makes no sense. They've never done, and he lost. But yeah, no. So you're in agreement here with the Elimination Chamber. I agree with you. I think you made some good points about at the end of this show. It was kind of like, it sucks Sammy didn't win, but we have Cody, right? Like, Cody's gonna get it done at Mania. It's okay. Like,
right, yeah. Like,
this now, and they can do Sammy with KO against the Usos, and maybe they'll even let them main event night 1, so he does still get the WrestleMania main event. And they did all of that, and then they just didn't pull the trigger on Cody.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, moving right along here, this is where I do have Backlash. I thought Backlash, a lot of the points you had mentioned similarly, the only difference really being that, my wife is such a fan of Bad Bunny. My daughter's such a fan of Bad Bunny. I remember we were so into this entire weekend. We watched the pre-show festivities for this show where they did a press conference, and Cody came out and asked people what they want to talk about in Spanish, and it got a huge pop from the insanely passionate Puerto Rican crowd.
Yeah.
Similarly, love when they do the show the night before, where they do the SmackDown. It builds so much anticipation. The actual event, I thought Io Sky and Bianca had an incredible main event, an incredible match to start things off. And I think they should have pulled the trigger on giving Io the title there. I think they should have just called an audible, because again, that was like, there was no bigger moment of Io getting the title than getting it there. Yeah, the cash-in was great at SummerSlam, and SummerSlam badly needed that cash-in. But sometimes you just go with what the crowd is doing, and that crowd was so into Io Sky. I thought that's where they should have done it. The reason why this isn't higher is just because I just felt after Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest, I was wifed. I think everyone was wifed, and I think it really Brock and Cody just didn't do much for us.
Yeah.
All right, so now I think we're in the top 5. Is that correct?
I think it is. I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is now, as we get to this top 5 here, the creme de la creme, the nitty gritty? Is your number 5 WWE pay-per-view of the year?
So for me, number 5, I have not said it before, and you might be wondering, where is this going to come out? It's Payback.
I get it. It's a great show. I do get it. It's a lot of fun.
And so I think one of the things that for me, because it was kind of a sleeper, again, like kind of not really expecting a whole lot going into it, but that, like, again, like if you're talking memorable moments, that the cage match between Becky and Trish is still one of my top memorable moments of the entire year. Like, that match was so good. It was better than it had any right to be. And the fact that it was, again, probably Trish's best match that I've seen. I'm not, I could go back and watch a bunch of Becky's older stuff to tell you what I think about that. But from what I've seen, also Becky's best match. Like, they brought the house down, and it was it kicked off real strong with that match.
Yeah, it's crazy that started the show. Like, that was one of those types of things where it was like, it kicks off the show, and then it's like, hey, follow that. And I don't know that anyone else got a chance to do that, even though the rest of the show was pretty good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, the rest of it, to me, again, pretty solid. Mysterio, Austin Theory, that was a very enjoyable match to me. Like, Miz and LA Knight, kind of, maybe take her to leave it. I wasn't a huge fan of Rollins and Shinsuke, but again, I'm actually a pretty big Raquel Rodriguez fan. So, again, like,
well, that was a good match. Yeah, they had like a 15-minute match for Rhea, right?
And that was another one where I thought maybe they'll let Raquel get it. Like, maybe they'll pull one off, and maybe Ripley's gonna drop the belt. And also, I'll say that I actually really like the street fight too. Like, that was another when KO does a swanton off of like that the ledge or whatever. I'm like, dude, you're gonna kill yourself.
That was insane. Yeah.
He like onto the concrete, like, you are a madman.
Yeah. He's a bigger guy too, and he doesn't. No, he holds nothing back.
Yeah. No. But yeah, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. From there, I agree. I think looking back, maybe I did put that one a little too low on the list. I think, honestly, I just watched Fastlane today, and maybe that pumped me up a little too much for that show. As we get to my top 5 now, I got to start with, I'm going to go with the Royal Rumble that you mentioned.
Okay.
I think for me, one of the reasons I think so fondly of this show, I was almost going to go to this show. I remember I had just gotten Bell's palsy. I was out of work, and I was like, I'm either going to go to Raw is 30 in Philly, or I'm going to go, and it would have had to be solo. I was going to go to San Antonio for the Royal Rumble. At the end of the day, went with James to Raw is 30. And I think that if I had gone to this Royal Rumble show alone, it would have been like, God, why did I go all the way to San Antonio? So I didn't do that. And I'm glad in retrospect I didn't. But what I did do was had like a really old school type of wrestling viewing party here at the house. Filmed it for the channel. Did all my reactions to every Royal Rumble entrant, which I thought was fun. This year, if we're not there in person, which I think it's leaning towards me being there in person, we should try to do a reactions, like film our reactions as the match is happening to the entrances, because I think that is a lot of fun to kind of capture those moments. My mother came by, my sister came by, my mom came by with bottles of Mountain Dew Pitch Black, which was a good surprise and got us all excited for doing the taste test. And we were all into Mountain Blue Pitch Black. Like, it was ridiculous. But like, that match then came and there was so much hype for it. And the match was silly and a little much, unfortunately. And again, as may Bray Wyatt rest in peace, it just didn't really work. But with that being said, I think everyone just being here, having that old school type of vibe of everyone into the Rumble, everyone having their picks. My mom just being like, wow, Gunther is Austrian. He's going to be my guy. And then Gunther almost ran the whole table to get there. And then you had two satisfying winners in Cody and Rhea, where it was like, the year before, you didn't watch this. Thank goodness you may have turned off and been done with your wrestling comeback. You had Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar both returning in their respective matches to win their matches. So that was, didn't work as well. And so certainly this was a good comeback for it. And then, as you mentioned, the Sami Zayn turn on Roman, I think, right up there, you probably have the Punk return, the Rock return, and then that's probably number 3 on moment of the year for me. I just thought it was so incredible, and you never thought he was going to do it. So when he finally clobbers Roman, thought it was great. And then once he lays them out, and you're just like a total carnage. Sammy and Kevin totally destroyed as the bloodline goes off, with then that wrinkle of Jay leaving on his own because he didn't want to turn on Sammy. I thought was really well done. One thing about this, though, the main event itself, other than that, was not very good. And I remember Roman being on Jimmy Fallon the night before, and when they asked him, hey, so are you excited for your match with Kevin Owens? He said, no, I've beaten Kevin Owens so many times. I'm going to beat him again tomorrow. How many more times am I going to have to fight this guy? And then he beat him. And I was like, well, they buried him some fierce.
Right.
It's like too much. So, but yeah, so that was it for me. Number 5. What was your number 4?
So I think I may have, because I'm kind of like looking back down at my countdown. I think I may have jumped the gun a little bit when I put Payback up there, because I think Payback was actually supposed to be number 4, with Night of Champions being 5.
Oh, Night of Champions. That's right. You hadn't mentioned Night of Champions. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can talk about it now. But again, nothing that you didn't kind of really say. I like not really knowing whether they were going to go with Seth Rollins or AJ Styles as the new kind of world heavyweight champion. So that was, knowing really not knowing what was going to happen, and being able to see kind of 2 different kind of pathways about what's going to happen afterwards. This version of AJ Styles that I've personally seen the last year or so is so crazy to think about how long and how successful he has been. And to think that he's one of those guys that kind of like doesn't really show up. But I mean, he made a huge comeback last week. And again, he got the Randy Orton treatment somehow, where he coming back looking bigger and better than ever. So let's see what happens there. But some of these other ones, it was good but not great. So that's why I should have kind of put it already. So I'm going to kind of switch it up, and then put up Payback, because now, as far as like the Night of Champions goes, it should have been a little bit further lower down the list. So I think, but it was still pretty good. So I'm just going to swap Night of Champions and Payback, and say Night of Champions is number 5, and then Payback number 4.
That sounds good. And also, I think it's Roman's first loss in how long? Even though he didn't get pinned, I thought that was definitely pretty. And then the Usos staying on, to separate out the bloodline finally, I think definitely goes a long way there as well.
Yeah.
All right. So for me here now, moving into my top 4. Number 4 for me on the list is going to be the Survivor Series War Games 2023.
Okay.
Had they added eliminations to the War Games matches throughout, this would probably, without question, be maybe a top 2. That's the only thing for me is just, you had this moment at the end of the show that had been built up for 10 years. The idea that the moment you never see. I think they have the shirt out now, which is a little cringe, but whatever CM Punk shirt says, hell frozen over. Hell froze over. That's fine. It's fine if people say that, but it's lame when you yourself are saying it, I think. Yeah. But, I never expected it. We were messaging back and forth, and I think when they had brought Randy Orton out as the member of Team Cody, I think we were all like, all right, well, Punk's not coming. And to my surprise, the crowd, I think, would have been fine if they just went off the air with all the baby faces, the huge RKO off the top, Randy's big return. But then they rolled the credits, and I think it's the moment of the year, even more so than The Rock's big return, was Punk coming out at the end of the show. And it was like, my gosh, he really was somehow, I thought for sure he was going to be the devil for AEW. And so I thought was,
it still could be, who knows? Like,
you know what? This part of me that's like, I wonder if he's the devil still.
Or he was gonna be, but now it's like, oh crap, like that kind of fell through. All right, well now we got to shift gears.
Right. We'll make it Jungle Boy or whoever, but
it's gonna be Rikishi. He did it for The Rock.
He did it for The Rock. But yeah, this moment was, it was top shelf. I thought it was just so great. I thought the men's Money in the Bank, the men's War Games was awesome. I think it was a testament to how high they've gotten with the Judgment Day and getting all of them over. Everyone just was going 100 miles an hour. The match was awesome. I just am not a fan of the 25 minutes of nothing until everyone gets in the ring. I think it really kind of detracts from both War Games matches. I get that's what War Games was, but I think they need to start to add something there. Give me eliminations or something that, like the Elimination Chamber or like the Rumble, there's at least something that can happen throughout this long period of time.
And I think that because that's more Survivor Series to me. Like, I know it's like it's kind of like a Survivor Series, in parentheses, War Games. But yeah, to me, you could do it instead of having it be this big, long, drawn out introduction to it. It's not until the last person actually gets into the cage, and that's when War Games starts. Right. You could flip it and just say everybody starts all at once, and then it goes, you do the elimination, and all that stuff. I think that would definitely be a better way to do it. I will say that I'll talk more about Survivor Series in just a moment because it's not there yet for me. But for me, number 3 is going to be Money in the Bank.
Okay, yeah, it's coming up pretty quickly for me soon as well. I'm sure that, if we maybe talk about it all at once here or not, depending on how your list ended up shaking out. But I think it was the 2 winners. It was the right winners. Yeah, I think EO winning, and I also think Damian, even though it remains to be seen what's going to happen with that as far as the end result goes. But I think that those were it felt right. It was a little bit shocking that Damian won, but you kind of want the Money in the Bank winner to be a little bit shocking. You don't necessarily want it to be the favorite, because then that's how, it really kind of sparks that it could happen anytime, any moment. And that's what we love about Money in the Bank as a concept. That briefcase can be turned in anytime, and it's going to be a surprise. Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you there. I think, it's kind of one of these deals too, where I think going in, I think everyone thought Logan Paul was going to get Money in the Bank. So I think if that
also the fact that he does not win is also makes this very high.
Right. I agree. Money in the Bank is not next for me, but I'll something about it as well. Next for me is WrestleMania Night 2. Even I had seats for WrestleMania Night 2 that were really, really good. Did not have very good seats for Night 1. I think putting this any higher on the list is probably a disservice to the show itself, because I will say this. Excuse me. Going into that show, I had very little expectations for Omos and Brock Lesnar.
Are you sure? That was match of the year for me.
I was like, what a complete. I mean, you had so many other options. You could have done Drew against Sheamus, and then you could have done Gunther against Brock, which I think would have made a lot more sense. You could have two really strong. Hell, you give me Brock and Bobby Lashley again if you need to. Even though all of those matches weren't very good, but Lashley not just being on the card and coming out with the trophy and waving was weird. For me, it was just a moment of being there with my wife and my daughter and them, really settling in, because the first night weren't too sure how my daughter was going to respond. That's why we got, seats up by right next to the moon, SoFi Stadium, tippy top section, because if we had to leave early, we didn't want to drop a ton of money down on really good seats.
Yeah.
So, but being there for that, the match itself, though, when it started, Brock and Omis, I was like, they pulled this off. This is actually, it wasn't good, but the moment when they're like having their little face off and the crowd's doing the holy shit, I was like, they actually got this sumbitch over to the point where this feels like a WrestleMania match. This is actually okay. And they kept it short and sweet. It was fine. Ronda Rousey and Shayna going and getting that match, I thought was just so silly, unnecessary. The WrestleMania showcase, hey, we have nothing to do with these guys and we have nothing to do with these men, so we're gonna have random matches, and just unnecessary, especially when Becky was in like a 6-man with Trish and Lita, and for years they were building up Becky Lynch versus Ronda one-on-one and didn't deliver. It makes no sense to me. It still sticks in my craw that we'll never see that match. I don't think Ronda will ever be back. So that was disappointing. Triple Threat was great. Again, I was not present for that because there was the moment my wife and daughter decided to eat so that we can make sure seats for Bianca, and because we're in the VIP section, we had to eat in the VIP section. And as I'm eating in the VIP section, I'm dying inside as I'm hearing everybody screaming. But on rewatch, I've watched it, and it is an incredible match. It's probably match of the weekend. And then, the main event, it's tough because when night one goes off the air, I was sitting there thinking, what a feel good. This is WrestleMania. WrestleMania is supposed to be your feel good moment that it ends really satisfying, that you're getting ready for the next year. And when night one ended, I left that building and I was like, wow, tomorrow Roman's going to lose the belt. Bloodline's done. And we have babyface champions. Let's see what they can do as the top of the card. So I was so convinced. And the whole week, it's like anyone who had a Cody shirt, you were talking with them, Oz, he's going to complete the story. Can't wait till tomorrow. This is
he's going to finish the story. And he should have.
And then he lost. And part of me was like, I can't believe he lost. This sucks. Especially because, again, with interference. For the third straight year at WrestleMania, we've had interference on behalf of Roman Reigns. It's ridiculous in the main event of WrestleMania to have that. But then when he won, Roman, all of a sudden you had live all these people unbelievably happy Roman Reigns won. You had people running around doing the bloodline one up in the air, all these things. And so live, it wasn't a back-breaking moment, but I could imagine you're sitting at home just going like, what the hell was the point of this entire 3 months?
I feel like those people that celebrated that are the ones that, like, they're also they're just excited for it because of the memes, and they're excited for it because it's like fast forward to 2030, and Roman Reigns is still the champion, and he just beat God or whatever, like.
And I think also it's part of, hey, let me act like a heel too to the fans.
Yeah, right. Let me be a little bit of a troll. All valid complaints. That's why I put it so low.
Oh, and then the other piece for me is moment of the show is I was not I thought once Triple H took over, that was the end of Shane McMahon. So when he came out to answer Miz's challenge, I about lost my mind. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. I was so happy to see him. Got up doing the Shane McMahon peace sign. I was so into it. And then he tears his quad in 2 seconds. And it's like, how did that happen? That was tough. Because I think they had something cool planned there. I assume.
Leave it to Snoop to save the show. But yeah, no, I'm sure it wasn't as good as whatever they had planned it to be.
Yeah. All right. So your number 2, is this your number 2?
My number 2. And it was a surprise that I, looking back and I'm thinking about it and going, what, this feels right. And my number 2 is Survivor Series.
There you go.
Maybe it's because it is so fresh in our minds. But I thought all of the matches were great. And listen, sometimes it takes a very just overall shocking moment. I am not a big CM Punk fan by any stretch of the imagination, but having him like return and come out and having it be in Chicago and having, again, like you said, we thought everything was said and done and it was great. This is, a great Randy Orton return moment and all of this stuff. And it was a phenomenal match. But then you hear that static and it was like goosebumps, and we were practically wasn't even paying attention anymore because it was like, oh, it's over, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think this is also when my wife texted you, and like I had a visceral reaction when his music hit. Like I was actually like, I like grabbed her. I was so shocked, like grabbed her leg, and I was just like the madmen did it. Like I think everybody was losing their shit, and I think that, like you said, there's not going to be any single moment that even you're going to have your average casual wrestling fan lose their shit over more than that moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. One for the ages, and I mean, it was one of those where, my wife is, I'd say, a relatively casual fan. I think she likes going to WrestleMania because you get the selfie in front of the WrestleMania sign just as much as she likes the actual being there live. But when that static hit, even she about barreled over the table. Couldn't believe. And I remember we were texting, and it was, the idea they did the Marvel after credit scene is just, to this day, I just amazed. They put up the little coming up next, whatever on Peacock, and then there you go. You get the CM Punk music on the wide shot too, with all the faces holding their hands in the air. Just incredible. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I stunned still. And listen, like from everything that we've seen still as of yet, it looks like his run, whatever it's going to wind up being, looks like it's going to be interesting at the very least. Which is, it's always interesting with him, good or bad.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like that's one of the things about why he went over to AEW in the first place. Like good or bad, he's a draw.
Yeah, and I mean, just the whole world losing their mind over it. I remember WWE put up like a brand new CM Punk shirt online. It was sold out instantly, and just everyone was just losing their mind over it. It's just really cool to see everyone kind of come together. And sure, you had your sourpuss AEW fans who just were trying their best to make it all great, shitty. But it was, as said,
like, oh yeah, good luck and everything. And I'm like, yeah, and that's the thing. Like everybody knows at this point he could be volatile, let's say. But that's like, I think that one of the things is going to be, he's not going to be able to get away with a lot of the stuff that he tried to get away with in AEW, or maybe, he kind of learned his lesson and maybe he's going to actually tone it down a little bit. And maybe it was more of a frustration boiling over kind of thing that happened in AEW. Who knows? Yeah. But I definitely think that, or at least I want to think that it's going to be different here as his kind of second time around here in WWE.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope so. And this brings now to number 2, and I believe we both have the same show as our number 1, because my number 2 is the Money in the Bank. I am surprised that retrospectively this show is so high on my list, and I really think the inadvertent swerve from you did a really good job in getting me to the point with this show, because what had happened was you had sent something like, oh my God, are you watching? Like, because there was a big moment. And I wrote, no, I wasn't watching yet. And I came home when I watched it on a bit of a delay. And it was, I thought you were excited about the return of Drew McIntyre, who had been out for a while since WrestleMania at this time.
Yeah.
Got a return at Money in the Bank. Great moment. And then the rest of the show continues. And then there comes the big John Cena return. And I lost. I was so excited because I was very worried that was the end of John Cena at WrestleMania. I thought this guy's going out just like a chump. And now I'm worried that's how he's going out now with Solo. But such a cool moment. This was not, I agree with you 100% that John Cena's last run was like, hey, I've got nothing to do, so I may as well just come in and help fill the void here of kind of the lull of the post SummerSlam, since this is, with the strike. But I do think he did a great job in this particular moment, coming out, getting the crowd was just so amped up. The crowd in London was so excited for this, really pumped up to have WWE back in their town again. I think they did the SmackDown the night before, and I thought his speech was great. And then he gets interrupted by Grayson Waller, and he hits him with my favorite, and it gets no response because I think it does show how much smaller the internet wrestling community is than you remember, but he hits him with the, do you mind if the TikTok, when the kid came over to John Cena to sit out and eat lunch with a fan.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, can you give me the "you can't see me," which is just so awesome. The fan did that. John Cena's response, how about instead I did spend some time catching up with my friends? And he said it at that show, and it popped me huge. And it's been something I've said a million times, right? Anytime I'm out catching up with friends, I almost hit my mom with it when she interrupted us a minute ago. How about instead I catch up with my friends? I just thought it was so funny, and for Cena to say it popped me big. And then promoted the idea of WrestleMania coming to London, which I think should happen and would be great. Like you mentioned earlier, 2 really satisfying winners for the Money in the Bank, and then you get that satisfying ending, definitive main event where the Usos pin Roman Reigns. The big closing segment there, being the first guy to pin Roman Reigns in my daughter's life, and she is almost 4 years old. That'd give you an idea of how often he has lost. And it was big. So, yeah, great show all around, and such a fun time to really be a fan. I think this was right around 4th of July weekend, right? I think.
Yeah. I
feel
I'm
like
trying to think.
Yeah, right around that weekend, because they were letting you know that if you couldn't watch it live, it'd be there to watch it on the July 1st. So it was right around.
Yeah.
I thought it was a perfect setup for the rest of the weekend. Yeah. Fun to watch that as well.
Yeah, because that was why we were kind of do we want to do that? Do we want to?
Yeah.
Do we want to fly up? But it was kind of too close to cruise and stuff, and then we had to change a bunch of plans. And
you almost went.
Yeah. The idea was floated out there, but because I think it was at the time we weren't sure what our other kind of big vacation kind of was going to be for the summer. It turned out to be the cruise, so it was we were kind of all right, well, what if we do a European vacation and we'll make that kind of revolve around Money in the Bank? But then we decided instead.
Oh man, you could have done 14-day vlog on the Watchline Wrestling YouTube channel.
Because I think because that was also when AEW was also in London or maybe was that towards the end of the month?
I feel like it was not too far after. I can pull it up. But yeah, they were both right there, and I remember that was one of these things where they were doing them. They were end of the summer, August 27th. But that was something, where it was you have these 2 huge shows going to London, and that would have been fun. I need to get out to London at some point and really kind of experience that whole deal. And what better way to do it than at least make it a wrestling trip as well. Yeah. So we've come down to the creme de la creme here, the number one, the coup de grace, if you want to throw that in there for Finn Balor. So Steve, what is, and I mean, I'm sure at this stage you've kind of gotten, I think it's the cat's out of the bag if people have been paying attention, but what is your number one PLE premium live event of the year for WWE?
Well, my number one is night 1 of WrestleMania.
Absolutely. It is the same number one for me, but I'll go ahead and I'll let you share your thoughts on it first.
I mean, I think everything because I think some of the stuff that you had said about night 2 is night 1, because night 1 was where you had Damage Control against Lita, Trish, and Becky.
Yeah.
And that was so, but my phone is almost. So you also have Seth beating Logan Paul, which again, anytime Logan Paul gets beat on a pay-per-view, I'm all for it. But the big one, obviously, is the main event, and it was again this was, I think, looking back, maybe the reason why they gave us this is because we knew what was going to happen. They knew what was going to happen night 2.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely KO and Sammy defeating the Usos to get the Undisputed Tag Team Championships. Phenomenal. And that they're ending this historic reign and doing all of those things. I mean, if you knew that one historic reign was going to end, it was going to be this one. And it was a very satisfying, very, very good match. Not just the ending, but like the entire match all throughout was phenomenal.
Great match. I just watched it, rewatched it here today, and I completely agree. Unbelievable match. Yeah. Also, I think they, as you mentioned, Logan Paul and Seth Rollins. I like the idea that they had the big entrance there, where you had Logan Paul recreating the Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 12 entrance, coming down on the what is that? The kind of the zip line there.
Mm-hmm.
Had Rollins come out, and they had the choir for his entrance, which I thought was cool. Didn't mention that at WrestleMania night 2, but I thought the entrances for Cody and certainly Roman with the orchestra was awesome, and I just love those.
Yeah, it was good.
Entrances for WrestleMania, those are always really fun, and I mean, people always say, part of the WWE show are the entrances and the costumes and the character stuff, almost as much as the matches themselves, and certainly that's the case at WrestleMania. But yeah, I mean, I think even that you had Dominic and Ray. I thought that was awesome. That was probably my favorite. That might have been my favorite match, on any other pay-per-view if it's on there. I think, it's third on this one, but that's just because I think Rhea and Charlotte was an incredible match. Probably, amazing. And I think and then you had the main event. So, but Ray and Dominic was great. You had the surprise of Bad Bunny being there. You had the incredible entrances of Dominic coming out of the police car as kind of the criminal. And then Ray.
Well, they had the homage to Eddie.
Right. Ray gets the 3 entrances. He's first doing Smoking on Gin and Juice with Snoop Dogg in the car. And then he's doing, Latino Heat, comes out as Eddie's music before eventually coming out to his own. And it was everyone getting involved. And, you had all the good glitz and glamour that come with the WWE style match. I thought it was awesome. And then, Rhea and Charlotte clearly with a chip on their shoulder, and my wife sitting there saying, right before they came out, this should be the main event. I think they made the right call with just being such a big story with the Usos and Sammy and Kevin. But you can make a case that, there's 2 nights of WrestleMania. One should go to the women's title, whoever wins the Royal Rumble, and one should go to whoever wins the Royal Rumble for the men. I can tell you that's how my wife felt. I know that's how Charlotte felt. Regardless of where it landed, it was an incredible match. And, you had 3, you can make a case for really strong matches on this same show. Just an incredible, incredible night. And for me, I wasn't going to go to this night because I thought it'd be too much for my daughter to go to. But when John Cena was announced as being on night 1 and opening the show, I thought, what better way to have her see her first live show than the first person she sees is John Cena. So that's why we went. And even though that match was bad, I thought his Make-A-Wish entrance was incredible.
And I think you bring up a good point about Rhea and Charlotte, because I do think that it should have been the main event. Yes, the Usos and KO and Sammy is also like a bigger moment, but that just because it's a bigger moment doesn't necessarily, it's tough because how do you follow up that? Having Sammy and KO win the belts, like anything that follows that is going to pale in comparison, even though Rhea and Charlotte was also a phenomenal match. So I think what you do is you could have done that match night 2. You could have done Usos versus KO and Sammy night 2, because that being put on right before Cody versus Roman still it would not have diminished anything from that match.
Yeah.
It still would have set up a crazy match. And, but I forget exactly how the saying goes, but something along the lines of the best form of revenge is thriving. And they certainly thrived under those conditions and put on a hell of a match.
Yeah, and you can't get, the way it ended with Sammy and Kevin, holding up the titles, finally ending the Usos' reign with all the fireworks coming down is about as good of an ending as you could ask for. But you could have also easily ended the show with, Demon in My Dreams blaring over the speakers as Rhea holds open the title, Charlotte looking down in defeat and holding up the championship as a new champ. And hey, who's to complain? We got them both on the same night. I mean, That's why I think this is both of our number one picks.
Absolutely.
So it was very, you give Charlotte a lot of credit. I just heard Charlotte just re-sign with WWE long term. I know she's out for a bit, but this happened twice for Charlotte, where Charlotte was supposed to be in the main event of night one of WrestleMania 38, but it was a similar argument where it's like, well, we are getting Stone Cold back for his first match in 20 years in Texas.
Yeah.
We can't have him go before Ronda Rousey and Charlotte. So Charlotte had it switched on her twice, and it's still a company. A lot of people dog on Charlotte, but she's company through and through, just re-signed. So, she definitely delivers once it comes to these big shows, and certainly at WrestleMania.
Well, can you imagine now with her dad over in AEW? I mean,
yeah, I thought for sure she was at the AEW bound. When I heard she re-signed, I was like, wow, I'm very surprised. I could see you again for the first time in this entire journey.
I went out and went back in, so maybe that's what I had to do the first time. We know for next time.
There you go. Have you seen me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah, you had come back a little while ago.
It was, I give you a lot of, Steve, I want to thank you because, this clearly I've got the newborn here. I've got the mother running in, doing a run in the middle of the show. So it's certainly, I've had, technical difficulties, but we got through it. I had a lot of fun doing these, and hopefully, I know that both of our schedules are crazy, but I'd love if we can get back and try to do our picks segments for each one of the pay-per-views coming up here in 2024. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
I think we could do that. I think we can maybe find a way to make that work.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it'd be great. And certainly excited. Thank you for, we've had a lot of fun with you here on the Watch Along Wrestling YouTube channel. And certainly want to wish you a very happy new year. And, I'm glad to have you back in the swing of things as a fan of WWE. I hope you get to go to another show in 2024. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to go to a show together.
Maybe.
All right. Well, until next time, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in. Let us know where we've got it wrong in the comment section, or tell us how smart we are and how we've completely nailed your top 12 as well. Let me know who did a better job. It's probably Steve, because I factored in a lot of my own personal stuff that had nothing to do with the shows, like my Mountain Dew Pitch Black tasting. But other than that, let me know who you agree with more, and wish you all a very happy new year, and hopefully you enjoyed this year of 2023 in the WWE.